Welcome to Manhood Modeled, where we study exemplary men from history who embody virtues worth emulating in our own lives. Today we're examining Mahatma Gandhi and the trait of nonviolence. Throughout history, certain men have demonstrated extraordinary nonviolence that transcends their time and teaches us valuable lessons for authentic masculinity today. Let's discover what we can learn from Gandhi's example and how we can apply this virtue to our own lives. The quote we will be using today is, "In a gentle way, you can shake the world." Gandhi transformed nonviolence from a personal moral stance into a revolutionary political strategy. His approach wasn't passive. It was active resistance, requiring greater courage than violence. For modern men navigating conflicts from the boardroom to family disagreements, Gandhi demonstrates that true strength comes from disciplined restraint rather than reactivity, and that moral authority often proves more powerful than physical force or positional authority. In 1930, Gandhi launched the Salt March to protest British control over salt production, a necessity for every Indian. British law prohibited Indians from collecting or selling salt, forcing them to buy the heavily taxed British salt. Rather than calling for conventional protest, Gandhi walked 240 miles to the sea, with growing numbers joining him along the way. When they reached the coast, Gandhi picked up a small piece of natural salt from the beach, a simple act of deliberate law-breaking that resonated across India and the world. When protesters were subsequently beaten without resistance, international opinion shifted dramatically. This campaign catalyzed the independence movement through moral force rather than physical confrontation, demonstrating how strategic nonviolence could challenge an empire. What are some core lessons we can learn from Gandhi? The first one is that nonviolence requires greater discipline than violence. Gandhi rigorously trained followers in nonviolent discipline, knowing that retaliation would undermine their moral position. Modern application here: in conflicts, recognize that restraint demonstrates greater self-mastery than reaction, creating respect rather than momentary satisfaction. Many people might not know, but in the 60s, when the civil rights movement was happening in America, Martin Luther King became a prominent figure within the movement. He took Gandhi's same concepts of nonviolence and applied them to the civil rights movement. He encouraged and trained people to resist when they were abused and beaten and maltreated, to still stand up for justice, but to not retaliate. It is an active choice to not retaliate, which requires much more energy and awareness than simply going by your impulses. What Gandhi shows us here is that we all have our trigger points. We first need to become aware of those. What are the things that makes us most reactive, most emotional, and most impulsive? Of those things, we have to ask ourselves, how quickly do we respond? Because if we respond immediately, that is usually a sign of some violent expression that is ineffective, because it only perpetuates the conflict to make it harder to resolve with more negative repercussions. Having true self-mastery looks like acknowledging the impulse, what you feel like doing, the emotions that come with it, the reactions you want to have. But after the acknowledgement, there is a replacement with not acting out on those things, but choosing a better way, choosing a nonviolent, effective mode of communication that still articulates the value and the boundary and whatever needs to be expressed in that moment, but it doesn't do it in a way that makes it worse. It will always feel good in the moment to lash out, to seek revenge, and to get your way. But ultimately, it's not respectable and it's not sustainable. As we see earlier in the story with Gandhi marching to the sea and picking up salt, that demonstrates a patience, a subtlety to his protest. He didn't immediately go attack the British soldiers or try to act out violently when they created the rules surrounding salt. He patiently and peacefully protested in a way that undermined the impulsivity of the British government. And the government caved first. They were the ones that had immature outbursts. And that's the same media attention that allowed the rest of the world to see the issues for what they were. Sometimes simply waiting it out works. Being wise and not needing to immediately react allows you to maintain a sense of groundedness. And ultimately, if you have more capacity within yourself, you don't have to worry, because the person who is weak, is fragile, and immature will cave first. The second lesson we can learn is to choose symbolic battles strategically. Gandhi selected salt, a necessity for all Indians, regardless of religion, caste, or wealth. Three main categories that at the time distinctively separated the different social classes of India. It created a universal appeal because everyone needs salt to live. Everyone understands the value of it. The modern application here is when we advocate for change, we want to identify issues that resonate beyond personal interest to create broader support. As much as you care about something, it doesn't mean it's effective to express your care for it in and as far as the way you would. You want to pick symbols that people can relate to, they can resonate with, they can understand and get behind. Symbols are powerful because they represent what goes far beyond words. Carl Jung had this concept of archetypes, which are universal symbols that are also universally applied in a timeless manner. The mother, the father, the villain, the hero. These are all things we can understand and get behind. Whatever you want to advocate for, make sure that you're picking symbolism that strongly resonates with people in a way that they can understand. Next, embody your message physically. Gandhi's simple clothing, fasting, and lifestyle choices visibly demonstrated his principles. The modern application here is ensure your actions and appearances align with your stated values to build authentic influence rather than relying solely on words. If you're trying to raise money to do volunteer work, don't wear 3 gold chains. Don't wear the new StockX Jordans that you just got. Dress appropriately. If you are trying to fight climate change in the environment, don't buy H&M clothes. Dress in secondhand clothes that represent that subject you're representing. You want to make sure that your external appearance matches your internal agenda and virtues. As much as we want to think what we look like doesn't matter, the majority of people's initial assessment and judgment of you is based on how you appear. It's important to be well-groomed, have good hygiene, communicate in a clear, effective manner, dress well. All of that communicates a message that you want to come across representing what you care about. And people will also respect you more and take you more serious. The next lesson we can learn, maintain respect for opponents as humans. Gandhi consistently distinguished between opposing unjust systems and hating individuals within those systems. The modern application here is in conflict, separate the person from the problem, maintaining respectful communication even during strong disagreement. We do a terrible job here in America by judging people on their political party. We write them off immediately once we know which party they ascribe to. And we will continue to live in a polarized country if we do not learn how to separate the ideology from the person. It doesn't mean that there aren't issues with that ideology, but no ideology can fully encapsulate somebody. And the fact that we have watered down our identity markers to I am Republican, I am Democrat, I am this, I am that. These overly generic categories, they create an over personalization to say, well, that person is nothing more than their belief, so this is what I think about them. Why even talk to them? There's no point. But it's important we learn to address the issues with the systems, that we confront the problems, and that we dialogue about the problems. We don't need to make personal remarks or judgments But how often do we use this seething vengeance to try to attack each other instead of realizing the problem goes beneath any one person and could never be the sole cause from just one person? The final lesson that we can learn is use tactical suffering strategically. Gandhi understood that willingly accepting consequences rather than inflicting harm creates moral authority. The modern application here: when facing opposition, consider whether your willingness to accept inconvenience or difficulty rather than retaliating might actually strengthen your position. We don't want to feel like we're losing something. We don't want to feel weak. We don't want it to feel like things are unfair. Our ability to willingly accept consequences instead of retaliating, trying to prove a point, or trying to get out of paying the price for something, taking ownership, gives us more authority because we are stating where our power truly lies, which is not to avoid responsibility, but to take on more, even if it's at the cost that we otherwise wouldn't be having to pay. It's important to trust the process and have the integrity to do the right thing. And inconvenience is not suffering. Maybe you are letting someone into line before you. Don't throw a tantrum and say it's not fair. Take the extra 5 seconds to let them in. Or maybe someone is having a bad day in a meeting and they take up more talking time than you. Stop feeling like the world is out to get you, that you're entitled to always getting what you want and things being conveniently given to you in your way. We live in a society that is overly convenient, and it would do us all some good, morally and spiritually and psychologically, to not hyper focus on ourselves and just get what we want when we want, but to truly embody what it means to incur difficulty and inconvenience for the sake of the greater good. You also feel more dignified and respecting of yourself. So the practical application here we can take away is to develop Gandhi-like nonviolent strength. Practice the, quote, sacred pause. This is a deliberate moment of non-reaction when provoked, creating space for a principled response rather than an instinctive reaction. Then implement, quote, proactive nonviolence, quote, by identifying one relationship or situation where you're experiencing conflict and determining what constructive action you can take that addresses the underlying issue without attacking the other person. The sacred pause is very simple. It's just a pause with silence. If you're in a moment of conflict, instead of immediately responding and lashing out, take a deep breath, let yourself settle into the moment, and pause. Count to 10. Viktor Frankl says the gap between stimulus and response, therein lies freedom. When we are immediately impulsive and reactive, we get stimulated and our response happens right after. We are not free people because that gap is very small. Through practice, through the pause, we start to widen that gap bit by bit until we become grounded, patient, and wise people that don't need to be reactive, that don't need to seek vengeance and get what we want right away, but can hold space in the tension to let things be what they are. And then the proactive nonviolence is where you want to reflect on a major conflict in your life. Maybe it's over household task or money or a anger problem that you have. And you want to think through, what's a constructive action I can take that addresses the underlying issue? If I am always leaving the dishes in the sink and my wife is getting mad at me and we constantly have conflict about it, I need to ask myself, what can I do to start making sure that I actually do the dishes and therefore we won't have the conflict? So you want to take the proactivity on your end as the one contributing to the problem to make sure that you are jumping in and helping out where is necessary, but from a way where you understand the core root of why you're doing that. You don't just stop doing that or start doing something for the sake of it. You want to understand the meaning behind it because you're going to use it as motivation. So beginning today, when you feel anger rising in disagreement, ultimately you will. The anger shows you what you care about, what you value, what needs change. When that anger rises up, take 3 deep breaths before responding and ask yourself, what principles matter most here? And what response would demonstrate both strength and respect? This Gandhi-inspired practice develops the internal discipline that precedes effective external action. It helps you reflect on what even matters in this moment, what's worth addressing, what's worth letting go. It's not being a slave to your emotions. It's acknowledging the emotions, creating some distance from them, and being able to have a clear mind that knows its priorities and what needs to be addressed in that particular argument. It gives you a very clear way forward in a way that is effective and addresses what needs to. The minute you become reactive, emotional, and combative, defensive, the whole thing is thrown off because you're no longer focusing on the principles that matter most, on emulating the virtues of strength and respect. You are now in a reactive battle over the emotional side of things, and you're no longer focused on the main thing. So be nonviolent like Gandhi. Take the time to discipline your mind and your heart to align with the virtues and values that bring sustainable change and peace. It always takes more considered effort to do this. You'll always feel more weak, like you're losing, like it's unfair. Gandhi went from being a powerful lawyer to a humbly lowly man who wore the same things every day. But in that humility, he realized what really mattered. He got his priorities right. He followed the process and he trusted it step by step in quiet obedience, and ultimately ended up in a revolution for his country that is still felt today and talked about today. Be like Gandhi, be nonviolent. This is our manhood modeled. Until next time.